Welcome to Ditch Relation Tales, where every story unravels a secret. So, let's dive into another story. I worked about 30 miles from my hometown, and IT almost never happened to be home during the daytime, unless some work-related matter brought me to the hometown during daytime. But that Wednesday morning was one of the very few exceptions. About 10 o'clock my job-related matters were completed, and I decided to make a short stop at my home, though I didn't expect anybody to be there. The kids Lisa and Elmer ought to be in school, and my wife Monica used to spend 2 hours at the gym at every Wednesday morning before she began her part-time job in a fashion shop at noon. Therefore, I had a slight surprise when there was a silver metallic Volvo V70 on my driveway. Monica had not told me about any visitor, and it was very unusual that she skipped her weekly gym hours. I can't deny that the V70 got me a bit curious, and as it is the most common car here, and it didn't give me any clue about the ownership. Our car register is a national register, and information about a car owner is available by a cell phone. A text message of the plate was sent to the registrar, and a few seconds later the car owner's name and address was returned to the phone. The reply from the car registry got me even more curious because the owner of the car was the shop where Monica worked, Paris Fashion AB. The shop was run by Alina Alfredson, married to Eric Alfredson, both in their mid-40s. Eric was known for his climbing the ladder upward to increasing influence. I hardly knew both of them because I was never invited to any of their parties. What the hell did any or both of them were doing at my house at that time in the morning? If Lena was the visitor, it must be of a very important reason, and it was Eric. I began to fear that it could even be the worst possible crap because there have been some rumors about him. But I still had a strong hope of finding an innocent explanation about the visit. However, I decided to prepare for everything and made my cell phone 5-megapixel camera ready for action. Not that I expected to need it, but just in case. Then I sneaked into the house, nobody in the kitchen, and nobody in the living room. Now my heart began to beat faster when I heard some muffled sounds from somewhere. The door to the master bedroom was closed, but with my ear close to the door I could hear a female voice, probably Monica. No time to lose. With the cell phone camera ready, I opened the door and took a step inside. Monica and Eric immediately noticed me. When I took some further steps towards the bed, aimed and took a picture using the small flash in the phone camera. After that I rushed to the bed, gave Eric several hard hits in his face with my both fists, dragged him to the floor, and gave him several hard kicks at his balls. Monica screamed hysterically and I shouted at her to shut up. Eric did not any attempts to resist when I dragged him naked out from the house and threw him beside his car. I went back in for his clothes and threw them to him and shouting, "If you don't get your bum off my property within 30 seconds, I'll beat the crap out of you." I think he was gone within a far less time and doubted that he had dressed. Back in the house I told Monica to get dressed, piss off, and not come back until tomorrow. I even told her that the children would spend the night with her parents and I would take them there after the school. Before Monica left the house, she tried to tell me some mumbo-jumbo that it wasn't what it looked like and that I was her only love and so on. Once again I shouted at her to shut up and a few seconds later she obeyed and left. Now afterwards I can only remember that I must have had a very serious shock because when looking back at what happened during the first hours after discovering them was like being in a fog. However, I know for sure that I rang my job and told them the truth and promised to be back at work on Monday. After that I had rang Eric's wife and told her that I had found her husband naked in my bed drilling my wife. I can still remember her swearing like an old harbor worker. After I phoned for the largest garbage container to be placed on my lawn. The next step was taking out all Monica's clothes and her other private belongings to the garage. I even took out the few things she still had left of those things she had brought with her when we moved together, and even all those things she had got from her parents and other relatives during our marriage. Everything was piled on a plastic tarpaulin at the garage floor. Thereafter I took my electric chainsaw and destroyed the rather expensive bed on which Monica had cheated on me. After that I had begun to destroy all other furniture in the whole house except in the children's rooms, which I didn't touch anything at all. When I got the container, I began to throw everything that remained in the cupboards into it and then filled it up with the broken furniture. It was an expensive loaded container, very expensive indeed. Monica had always preferred to buy things of good quality. Now I didn't care a shit about the value of the lost belongings because my lost marriage felt as a much worse loss for me. One of my friends owned a summer house near the town which his family seldom used. I called him, told what happened, and rented the house until I would find somewhere to live in the town where I worked. During my lunch break in town, I got our shared bank accounts and divided in equal parts. When everything except my clothes and personal items was out, I began cleaning the house and at the evening began working in my still intact home office by loading the picture of Monica and Eric to my computer. It was a very good picture of them screwing in all different positions in both of them, looking at the camera. No doubts about who were the people in the photo. I knew that Eric had several political goals at the local and county level, and one of them was to be a leader in his political party. Politicians usually want publicity, and now Eric got a lot of it because I emailed the picture of him screwing Monica to all the local politicians whose email address I was able to find. A text explaining whose drilling home was added to the picture. I even printed out some pictures which I sent by mail to people without an email address. Monica rang me several times during the day. I took all her calls and told her every time that for the time being we had nothing to say each other. To my great surprise, I didn't get the expected visit from the police. Obviously, Eric had not accused me about the beating I gave him. I slept the night in my son's room and can't deny that I got remorseful in the morning, when I looked around the house and found out how much I had overreacted in my shock and anger. No doubt that was why the Vikings had been feared visitors around the coastal areas in Europe. However, I thought that it was better to be an overreacting savage than a wanking idiot. When a man found out that his wife cheated on him. When reading the morning newspaper, I found an interesting headline: Naked Man in Car Crash. The article that followed said that a naked man had crashed his car to a garbage truck. And as he hadn't used the safe belt, he had got several injuries, though the airbags had saved him from the worst thing that could happen. One thing was for sure. Nobody could accuse me for hitting his face, and the next thing for sure was that there would be more to come. Indeed, much more came in the newspapers about the scandal involving such an important politician. Monica came home at 10 o'clock in the morning and got a shock when she saw the container on our lawn and when she came into the almost empty house. She began screaming for several minutes before she was able to ask me, "What have you done?" I replied, "What have I done? What have you done? You terminated our marriage and I have cleaned up what remained of it. Your things are in the garage. Take it away before the house is sold." Be screened. Do you know what happened to Eric, and do you know that I'm fired from my job? Don't blame me. Is it really my fault that Eric and you screwed up our marriage and your job? She didn't reply. Instead of that, she walked around the house and screamed loudly when she understood the serious consequences of her cheating. Then she called the police and waited outside the house until the police car arrived. 2 young policewomen asked me if they could have looked in the house. I agreed, and they asked a few questions about Monica's belongings and spent a few minutes in the house and the garage. Before leaving, they told Monica that they were sorry for her. Though my overreaction was an incredible stupid thing, but it was not against the law. Monica cursed me and left our house. Our kids and Monica remained with her parents, and when I rang them the next day, I agreed to meet them for a negotiation because Monica refused to see me or talk with me. We met at a cafe, and because we could not change the past, we agreed to talk about the future. Because I had always liked Monica's parents very much, I told them the truth and that I intended to find an apartment close to my job. I wanted the kids to remain in their present-day school and close to their friends, and that was why I offered Monica to have the custody. My only condition was that I wanted to see the kids every second weekend and for some special occasions after agreement plus shared holidays. Monica's parents agreed that it was important for the kids to have a good relation to their father. They even promised to help Monica buy me out from the house. As the negotiations had obviously been better for Monica than she had expected, she agreed to see me about details that needed to be worked out. I met her at the same cafe where I had met her parents, and as both of us understood that there was no way back, we didn't talk about that. Instead, we did our best to find solutions for the future. We agreed about the children, and she said that she and her parents were working on buying me out from the house. By using his connections, my boss found a well-located nice apartment for me where I could move in a month later. One of my Fridays, without my kids, my fellow worker Anna invited me for dinner with her and her husband, Ralph. I accepted, and to my great pleasure they had even invited Ralph's newly divorced sister, Elise. Elise was a rather beautiful and very easygoing woman, a few years younger than me, and we had a good time together during the evening. We even agreed to go for a shopping trip to the huge mall in our county capital at the next morning. The trip went well, and Elise's 5-year-old daughter, Lena, and I became friends within no time. Elise and I decided to cook a dinner together at her place at the evening. The three of us had much fun during the cooking. While eating the dinner, Lena looked at me and asked, "Do you want to marry my mom?" I was taken by surprise and could hardly say no, and that was why I said, "I would like to do that, but your mom must think about it first." Lena looked at her mom and asked, "Are you thinking about it?" Elise gave both of us a bright smile and said, "Oh yes, I promise to think very much about it." In the evening, when Lena was sleeping in her room, Elise and I did some light necking in a sofa, and she said, "Lena really want me to get married because her father is already living together with his new girlfriend, and you seem to be approved to be my husband." And Lena's opinion. I kissed Elise and said that I would do my very best to keep my promise to Lena. I got a positive surprise when she offered me to stay overnight if I agreed to behave as a good guy, though I didn't have a slightest clue about how Elise expected a good guy to behave. I agreed to be that. I decided to go on slowly until she would say no, and stop there. I kissed her tenderly, put my hand under her hemline and whispered in her ear, "It feels like we've been together a long time, and I've been in love with you the whole time." She giggled and replied, "Are you joking?" She didn't make any attempts to resist when I moved up my hand higher up under her skirt, caressed her in her thighs and said, "No, I'm serious, 100% serious." Now she looked me straight in my eyes and asked, "Serious or is simple attempt to get me laid?" "How shall I know?" "Believe me." She continued looking in my eyes and replied, "I do believe you, and I care about you too. But isn't it a bit strange to say such things during our first date?" Now I hugged her with my both arms and said, "I can't explain how it could happen so incredible soon, but it did, and the truth is that I'm in love with you." She didn't resist when I began to undress her, but said that unprotected sex was out of question. She wasn't on pills, and that she didn't expect me to come to our first date equipped with condoms. When both of us were naked, I took her to the bedroom and gave her the best time of her life. When she came, it was very intensive and wriggled back and forth. Back in the bed, she told me that her ex had never been able to do anything like that to her. Elise and me continued with necking and small talk for some time before we fell asleep. Since she feared that I would regard her as a cheap 304 and dump her, I had to do my very best to convince her that everything I had said about love was true. The next day, I took Elise and Lena to a famous inn for dinner, and it felt that we were a real family. Back at the job on Monday, I had many questions about the weekend, and obviously it was well visible on me that it had been a great weekend. Of course, Anna's dinner had been a setup plan to lighten up an unhappy guy, and to Everybody's surprised it had gone much better than they had expected. Erica Fredston was dumped by his wife, and by his friends and the politics after the scandal. He left the town. Monica bought me out from our house. We got a new job at an office and is dating some guy she found on the web. I've never met him, but my kids said that they like him. I'm happy because Lisa and Elmer are very well together with Elise and Lena. Elise and I are planning for a wedding, and she's even talking about a baby. Our relation is on a great level, and we are looking for a house in some nice area. The life used to be up and down for most people, but for the time being it is very much up for Elise, our kids, our ex, and me.